I couldn't have picked a better scripture than the one that Pastor communicated to me. It's from Matthew 18 and the first 6 verses. At that time, the disciples came to Jesus and asked, "Who is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven?" He called a little child and had him stand among them. And he said, "I tell you the truth. Unless you change and become like little children, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven. Therefore, whoever humbles himself like this child is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven, and whoever welcomes a little child like this in my name welcomes me. But if anyone causes one of these little ones who believe in me to sin, it would be better for him to have a large millstone hung around his neck and be drowned in the depths of the sea." Wow. I was in 3rd grade when I got the mumps. You have to be an older person to have gotten the mumps. Because not too long after I had the mumps, when I was in 3rd grade, the measles, mumps, rubella vaccine came out. And so none of my children have had the mumps or the measles. I had both. Of the two, and they were both in 3rd grade of all things. I missed so much school in 3rd grade. To this day, I think there's things I don't know that I would have learned if I hadn't got sick during 3rd grade. But I became very ill with the mumps, especially. And I became so weak, my mother had to carry me back and forth to the bathroom. It's really good they have a vaccine for this now, isn't it? I literally could not walk. I could barely eat at all. I didn't eat for days. And my fingers got really skinny. This is something I remember very clearly from 3rd grade, is my fingers being so skinny because I couldn't eat. And to this day, occasionally I will have nightmares when it seems like my fingers are so frail and skinny like they were when I had the mumps. Isn't that strange how that sticks with you? All these years later, I'm 62 by the way, and that would have been, I don't know, about 72-ish. So time goes by. And but my reason for mentioning the mumps is that the virus set me back into total dependence on my mother. Now, in 3rd grade, of course, I was still very dependent on my parents, but the mumps put me back into being totally dependent like an infant. Jesus said, "I tell you the truth." There it is. "Unless you change and become like little children, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven." Now, I'm persuaded that this matter of becoming like children is about total trust and dependence on Jesus. The only way to live in God's kingdom is by total trust and dependence on Jesus. The very obvious thing about children is that they are dependent. Children come into the world with nothing but the expectation that someone is going to help them, right? They come with a very clear expectation that someone is going to help them, completely dependent. And that dependence, although it reduces, it lasts for years. Now, for me, back in the 3rd grade, it was no great crisis to return to total dependence on my mother. I'd been sick many times, and my mother had always cared for me with excellence. I had no doubt she would be there for me again, meeting my urgent need. Is our level of trust in God similar to that, I wonder? I still have to choose trust over and over again. I choose trust in God daily. If we're to live in the kingdom of God, we must learn to live in trust, even choosing that trust again and again, learning to live in dependence on God. Not that I sit at home and pray for groceries to be delivered to the door instead of going to work, but it is God who provided that employment to me. The Lord provided it. And it was pretty clear at the time that it was the Lord providing it. And through that employment, it provides for many of my needs. But can I trust God if I lose my job or even lose my ability to work? I can trust God, but I would have to prayerfully choose it. again and again. You know, spiritually, we're never far from a small boat during a storm on the Sea of Galilee and the question, "You of little faith, why are you so afraid?" And back in Matthew 18, Jesus said, "But if anyone causes one of these little ones who believe in me to sin, it would be better for him to have a large millstone hung about his neck and to be drowned in the depths of the sea." Now, when I read this, my imagination tends to get stuck on that, right? What would it be like to have a rope tied around my neck and the other end tied to a large rock, and me, rock, rope, and all be thrown overboard? That's where my imagination gets stuck. But actually, Jesus means for it to stick with us, the image. He's getting our attention, right? He got my attention. But he's making the point, his point there is how much God values children. The point isn't for me to get stuck on the illustration. The point is to understand how much God values children. Yes, children are of exceedingly great worth to God, and they should be of great worth to all of us as well. Now, the passage began there in Matthew 18 with a shocker. The disciples are stuck on figuring out who's the most important, and Jesus turns everything on its head with the announcement that a child is of highest worth in God's kingdom. In that second verse, he called a little child and had him stand among them. Now, Jesus said this kind of stuff all the time. I mean, he said the first shall be last and the last shall be first, right? He was always turning things on their head. And sometimes we'll refer to the upside down kingdom, that God's kingdom is an upside down kingdom because everything's the opposite of what you expect from the world's ways. Jesus relentlessly tries to shake our thinking out of the world's ways so we can begin to understand how God thinks and what God values. And Jesus says plainly, "And whoever welcomes a little child like this in my name welcomes me." So if we are people who truly worship Jesus, we regard children as of great worth. It's as if Jesus is saying, if you value me, you will value children in a similar way, and you will see me in them. Now, the world in general does not do this. Around the globe, the majority of children live in crushing poverty. On the whole, the world has rejected Jesus' teaching on the great value of children. The world does not have the final say. I'm going to show you a document, an ancient letter written in 1 BC, and it has survived to this day, which is an amazing tale in itself. Suffice to say, it was written by a Roman soldier by the name of Hilarion. He wrote it to his wife Alice. To them, it was the year 753, which was 753 years after Rome was founded. That's how they kept track of the years at that time. To us, it's 1 BC. Hilarion and Alice had one child and were hoping for another, but only if it was a boy. The letter overall is loving and tender, and it also includes this: "I beg and beseech of you to take care of the little child, and as soon as we receive wages, I will send them to you. If, good luck to you, you bear offspring. If it is a male, let it live. If it is a female, expose it." Exposure was taking a child into the wilderness and just leaving it there. And this was a very common practice throughout the Roman Empire, I think, except with the Jews. In fact, it was part of Roman law. Roman law was based on the 12 tables, which were adopted in 449 BC. And in the 12 tables, it was legal to simply take a child out in the wilderness, leave it there, if it was a male who had deformities or any female. Most families did not raise more than one daughter. That was the world into which Jesus was born. So in the Roman Empire, a husband had absolute rights over his wife and children. And that culture, like many fallen human cultures, valued boys more than girls. We think abandoning a child to the elements is horrendous and criminal. But you know why? Why we think that? We think that because of Jesus. That's the reason you think that. You might think that that is an innate moral principle that's within you. It is not. That's what they do in Brazil, by the way. I got in the habit and I haven't quit it yet. It is not. The reason that we believe in the value of children is because that is what Jesus taught us to believe. And you can see from, as you saw with Hilarion's letter, at the time about the time Jesus was born, it was very common all over the Roman Empire to just get rid of the kids you didn't want. Take them out in the wilderness and leave them there. Sometimes slavers would find them and raise them, maybe. But when the Christians came on the scene, they started looking for those children and taking them and raising them. Now that was different. And within 300 years of Jesus' death and resurrection, the law was changed in the Roman Empire to make infanticide illegal. That was Jesus' influence. It could happen no other way. There is no other explanation for the change of the law in the Roman Empire than the fact of Jesus' influence and the spread of Jesus' followers all over the Roman Empire. And so within 300 years of Jesus' death and resurrection, infanticide became illegal in that empire. In the year about the year 155 AD, Justin Martyr wrote, "We have been taught that it is wicked to expose newborn children, for we regard them as men and women in the sight of God." I have a story for you which is best told anonymously. While Pam and I were serving in Brazil in the late 90s, there was a Brazilian couple supported by the Free Methodist churches in Brazil, and they were working with an unreached indigenous tribe in the Amazon. Now, if a child were born into that tribe with any deformity, or if there were some circumstance interpreted as a bad omen, that child would be buried alive. Now, you can already see how similar this tribe was to the cultures of the Roman Empire. It's almost exactly the same. So this young missionary couple was serving there, and one day there was one of these burying a child alive things going on, an infant, and the young missionary couple grabbed the child and ran. And they were able to adopt her. They had already been blessed with 2 girls. And this indigenous child, who they stole, became their 3rd daughter. And in all over the world, where the Free Methodist Church ministers among poor people, the pastors also tend to be poor, and their children and the children of national missionaries are eligible to be sponsored. And so this little girl was a sponsored child. And at that time, it was Director Linda Adams. She insisted on being the person that had the privilege of sponsoring this little girl that got stolen when she was being buried. Here's a pic. I got a picture of her. There it is. That's her in 2016. I'm curious. Just now when I told the story of a tribe who buried unwanted infants, did you put yourself in the story? I tend to do that. I don't know if you do. If you did, I was the infant being buried. That's who I was in the story. Trying to breathe and getting dirt in my mouth and my airways and lungs. Or did you put yourself in the place of a bystander, thinking about whether did you dare grab that child and run? Maybe you put yourself in the place of the mom who didn't want her child to be killed, but it was the decision of the village elders. You might have put yourself some people hear stories differently. You might have put yourself in the story, maybe not. I bet nobody here, I'm giving you the benefit of the doubt, I'm going to say that nobody here put themselves in the place of the person who dug the hole or the people who were throwing dirt on top of the baby. See, I'm giving you all the benefit of the doubt. And why didn't you? Partly because Jesus has taught us to value children. And it comes all the way down to us today. Now I've got that photo, another photo that I received in March of 2024. And these are sponsored children at Rompigibão, Bahia, Brazil. It's a very, very remote place. I asked the church planter when I visited the place, I asked, how did you ever find this place? She planted a Free Methodist church there, very remote. And it's very poverty-stricken. And the children in the congregation, most of them are sponsored. The little girl in the front is, and within days of receiving the photo, I happen to have my annual eye exam. And that's Ruth brought out of the photo, so to speak. And you can see, I showed this photo to my ophthalmologist. He said, this little girl needs surgery to correct this condition. He told me it was called strabismus, which is the first time I'd heard the word. She needs surgery, and time lost is vision lost. And was on a waiting list to have the surgery provided by the government, but the waiting list was over 4 years long. She could have waited 4 years and it might have turned into 5 or 6. And my ophthalmologist said, time lost is vision lost. And ICCM has a fund called Anne's Angel Fund. It's for the medical care of children who have a specific need. And it was going to be $1,200. We're ready for the next slide. For to have the surgery. And, I had just been in that little town before I got the picture like the next week after I got back. And so I oversee ICCM's ministry in Brazil. And so I talked to the director and I said, I think we can do this. Can't we do this? And she said, of course we can do this. And then it got close to the day of the surgery, and I got nervous. Here I've arranged, from all this distance, I've arranged for this little girl to have eye surgery. What if it doesn't go well? So I asked all kinds of people, pray. Pray for Ruth. Pray that this surgery goes well. And praise God, as you can see, it went well. I'm just so pleased, so thankful. Now this girl, I have to be careful with this name, is her name. She lives in a creative access location. Now I use that phrase, creative access, meaning it's a country where you can you are persecuted if you are a Christian. So ICCM has ministry in many countries where we can't even say publicly that we have anything going on there. We have to keep it somewhat secret. And there's children from some of these places that are on the table back there. So lives in a creative access country. Her family is so desperately poor that the only electricity they can afford is enough to run one light bulb in the house. One. That's all they can budget for. And so for several years we've been, you can see there's a little device there that's providing light. ICCM has been receiving donations to buy these little solar study lights. And if you charge them for 8 hours in the sun, they can give 8 hours of light during the night. And we've given away many, many of these to children, because a lot of the children who are sponsored live in homes where there is no electricity. And usually they're fairly close to the equator, the sun comes up at 6, the sun is gone at 6. And how do you study in the evening? Well, this could help. And so we've thankfully been able to give away many, many of these little solar lights for children to be a bit better able to study. And also is now a sponsored child, meaning she has better nutrition and the opportunity to know Jesus. Now I've got a picture of some boys in another creative access country. And here they demonstrated for a pastor friend of mine how they often drink water from a ditch, which also often makes them desperately ill. These boys live on the street. Street kids, we could say. So ICCM was able to provide water filters. There they are with their water filters. And we're working with that pastor toward a more permanent solution for better water. And we got a little picture of there's the result of those water filters, what they do. So I'd like you to meet. She grew up as the daughter of a Free Methodist pastor in Kenya and was sponsored throughout her childhood. She was able to attend university and become a lawyer. She divides her time between her law practice and the work of the Set Free movement. Now, the Set Free movement, maybe you already know, but the Set Free movement is the anti-trafficking ministry of Free Methodist World Missions. So she works and co-leads the Wonders Project, which a lot of girls around the world who live in poverty-stricken places, they lose a week of school every month simply because of their period. They don't have funds to buy products. And so Wonders are washable, reusable product that helps girls attend school the whole month instead of just 3 out of 4 weeks of the month. And works with that ministry. It's part of the Set Free movement. And she's also a lawyer, grew up as a sponsored child. And here's the thing. In September, won the first case against human traffickers in the history of Kenya. The very first case against human traffickers. She represented a young man who had good English. He had been promised a good paying job in Thailand, and the nefarious folks provided for him to have a passport and a plane ticket to go to Thailand. But once he was there, he was forcibly trafficked into Myanmar and forced to work for a criminal gang, making phone calls to people in the US to try to scam them out of money. Did you ever imagine what was going on the other end of that scam call? In this case, it was a young man who had been trafficked because he had good English. And there he was under the power of a criminal gang in Myanmar, forced to make these phone calls to try to scam you, or your parents more likely, out of money. Well, somehow he escaped, got back to Kenya, thank God, and Lillian took his case, and he won. I didn't calculate it how much it came to in dollars. I read it in Kenyan shillings, and I should have calculated. But he won a financial settlement against the traffickers, and it was the very first case to be won against traffickers in Kenya. Sponsorship was a great help and benefit, and now she is giving back in ways that, to my mind, far outdo the good that was done for her. It's the good that was done for her is multiplied by the power and the grace of Jesus. It's being multiplied over and over and over again through Lillian's life. Sponsorship is transforming life there in Brazil. It's transforming life in that creative access country. And it's not just a matter of money. Sponsored children most often receive support in prayer from those who sponsor them. In this case, significant prayer support was also recruited for that delicate surgery that she needed, that it would go well. And all of us praying at that time were so relieved and delighted to learn of the good result. I'll also mention that the director of ICCM school was a sponsored child, and now he's giving back in a huge way. The assistant director of the school was a sponsored child, and she gives back also in a very big way. By the grace and power of Jesus, the good that was done to them as children is just multiplied over and over and over and over again. Because they are people, I go and visit them every few years, and they love the Lord so much, and they teach children to love the Lord with all their heart, soul, and mind and strength. The cost to sponsor a child is $38 per month, $1.25 daily. Less than a senior, is that less than a senior coffee at McDonald's? I think it is, although I don't drink a lot of coffee. And I now qualify for the senior coffee at McDonald's. And of course, if you're getting your coffee at Starbucks, it's going to be a whole lot more than $1.25. I heard of a woman not that long ago who wanted to sponsor a child, and she decided, I'll get my coffee at McDonald's instead of Starbucks, and I can sponsor a child. I don't know how big a sacrifice that would be for you, but that was her sacrifice. That's what she did. Well, ICCM exists to honor God, to help children, and also to help you fulfill your purpose in life. What do I mean? I think, well, I'll speak for me. My purpose in life, I take from these verses. Jesus replied, "Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. And the second is like it, love your neighbor as yourself." If I can become that person that's described in those verses, that's a sufficient purpose for my life right there. And that's a big purpose, isn't it? Love God with all that I am. Love others as much as I love myself. Wow. So I say ICCM exists in part to help you fulfill the purpose of your life. Part of you loving your neighbor as yourself. We're in partnership in learning to love our neighbor as ourselves. And I know you do. I know you do that on a local level, and I know you do that on a global level. And this is just another piece of that puzzle, that a partnership that we want to be in with you to bless the lives of kids, to help you fulfill the purpose of your life. You know, the world tells you the purpose of your life is to get all the pleasure you can. That's what the world has been telling you ever since the very first time you sat down in front of a television. And that was a long time ago, for me at least. That was in the 1960s. And the hidden message, there was a hidden message in every commercial. A hidden message that was, the purpose of your life is to get all the pleasure you can. You watch for this. Watch for it in advertisements. commercials, billboards, any place you see an advertisement, you see if that message isn't hidden in there, the purpose of your life is to get all the pleasure you can, because they can assume that that message has already been ingrained in you, and it has. It was ingrained in me very, very deep in my soul. And for a long time, I had a divided purpose. I wanted to love the Lord my God with all my heart, soul, mind, and strength. I wanted to love my neighbor as myself. But I had also learned that other purpose, that the purpose of my life is to get all the pleasure I can. And you know what Jesus said? No one can serve two masters. Can't be done. I tried it until I realized what that other master was. It took me a long time to realize this is what is deep in my soul, that the purpose of my life is to get all the pleasure I can. Because those seeds were sown into me by every commercial I ever watched. It came hidden, entered into my soul in a hidden manner. The purpose of your life is to get all the pleasure you can. Jesus comes along and says, how about learning to love the Lord your God with all that you are and love your neighbor as yourself? Now that's a good purpose. And that's the purpose that Jesus has for you and for me.